good afternoon, good morning, or good night, or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Naranya. The Film Realist Podcast is a film and TV podcast from a complete nobody that's hopefully for somebody. It is a jam-packed episode. This is episode 6, where I'm going to be reviewing not only a feature film with The Woman King, but an entire season of a Netflix series with Cobra Kai Season 5. Now, if you do want to skip ahead, timecodes will be in the description. Spoilers for Cobra Kai will be done as a whole because it is difficult to talk about a television series without having specific details, but The Woman King will have a non-spoiler section and a spoiler section. So, let's get into Cobra Kai because I have a lot to say. I think. We'll find out. Let's jump ahead. Cobra Kai Season 5. It is crazy to me that this YouTube Red show is now in its 5th season and one of Netflix's most popular. The show currently seems to have, I don't know how they record or how they document this officially because you never actually get viewer numbers, but it is the highest in terms of current points. So I don't exactly know how that works, but like I said, we're going to get into full spoilers for Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai Season 5 continues just where we left in Season 4, with Terry Silver coming back to run Cobra Kai. He has turned it into a massive organization. They are opening multiple places all over the valley because he wants Cobra Kai to become the Walmart of karate across the entire United States, and he has a goal in mind that we learn later off in the series. So I love Cobra Kai. Karate Kid is a franchise that I think has taken me longer to appreciate over time. The first one was directed by John Avildsen, who actually all three of them were directed by John Avildsen, who also directed Rocky 1 and Rocky 5, but we don't need to talk about Rocky 5. But regardless, it is a phenomenal trilogy of 80s films that really do capture that decade and what it did bring to cinema in the best ways possible with its ridiculousness. Let's be honest, with all the fighting that happens in this franchise, there's actually no real justification for any such police enforcement or legal act. I mean, there's some of it, I guess, in this show, but there's assault all over the place that there are very few consequences for. But no, so I think the show as a whole has worked off really, really well. I think bringing in characters from the different films over time has been an amazing way to continually expand the Cobra Kai world. And I think that Terry Silver as almost like the Emperor, to use a Star Wars metaphor, in the Karate Kid Cobra Kai universe is incredible. His character in part 3 is insane and an absolute cartoon villain, but Season 4 was able to add a lot more dimension to the character, which was great because while Cobra Kai is far from realistic, the tone is a lot more subdued than the films in some aspects, not in all of them, but I like having a consistent villain. We had John Kreese for seasons 1, 2, and 3, and then bringing in Terry Silver was a great addition to 4. And not to mention, we get an entire season of Chosen with Season 4. Chosen was in Season 3 only for that one episode, or 2 episode Japan arc, which was cool, which, if you're unaware, was the significant throwback reference to Cobra Kai, Karate Kid Part 2. But so Season 4 as a whole, we see, like I said, Terry Silver is absolutely phenomenal. I really enjoy what Thomas Ian Griffith is doing with this character, and that we really get to see how evil this man is. The person who, and we actually did get backstory for him with all of this is kind of blending together for me, but during the war flashbacks with John Kreese and it was Season 4. It was Season 3. Season 3 had all the John Kreese flashback stuff. Season 4, this is the first time, sorry, I know I'm rambling all over the place, but this is the first time that 2 seasons have been essentially within 12 months of each other, if you don't include the Netflix dropping 1, 2, and 3 almost all at the same time. But regardless, I like seeing Kreese as this sleazy businessman, but he seems to have he's modernized himself. He knows how to manipulate people, and he certainly does that with Daniel LaRusso through the first half of the season. Well, so let's get into this specific story plot beats, and then I can kind of mention how I feel overall about the series, or the show, the season in particular. So the first 2 episodes continue exactly off where we saw Miguel. He had left the All Valley tournament. I can't remember which number it was, but irrelevant. He has gone to Mexico to find his birth father because he believes that's necessary to who he is, because his relationship with Johnny is a little bit fractured after that truly heartbreaking scene where Johnny was drunk and he said that he was sorry he was a bad father to Robbie when Miguel was under the impression he was talking directly to him. I like this little almost palate cleanser from the insane karate of the All Valley tournament, and you get to see why Miguel's mom left this guy. It is quite funny to me that he just thought he could go to Mexico and find a guy named Hector, and then ultimately I think it's the second Hector he bumps into turns out to be his birth father. And through the 2 episodes we get to see that, yeah, this guy is a complete piece of garbage, and you understand why Miguel's mom and his grandma, or abuela left Ecuador and fled to California. And I think what this season does best is burying a lot of metaphorical hatchets, or I mean, they might be literal to some degree in the show, with bringing Robbie with Johnny to Mexico and hoping that a lot of these issues that we have to get rid of them. Kreese is in prison. That's a door closed for now. And that he really wants his actual son and his ward, or his quote-unquote, not officially, but stepson, to get along. And ultimately, we do get closure with that. And I think that's really interesting because what Karate Kid always did that I think this show does better is we just had villains and heroes. It was very black and white, quite literally to some degree, with Cobra Kai being in black, Gi and Miyagi-Do, which wasn't called Miyagi-Do, but that's besides the point. Miyagi and Daniel being in white. So literally black and white. And obviously there's the 80s redemption arc, not even arc, moment from Johnny Lawrence at the end of the first Karate Kid where he says, "You're all right, LaRusso," but ultimately that's not built into that character's story arc. And what I like most about what Cobra Kai has done as a whole is that we have been given, at least amongst the kids, and I call them kids even though they're all young adults now, we've had switching sides, and that's been super. This show is popcorn, period. Like, it's super fun to watch. I think the emotional beats, when they want to hit them, effectively do, but at the same time, this is a well done live action cartoon would be the best way that I would describe this show. And season 5 even does that, where we're bringing in elements from all these past different films, with Chosen being in the whole season. We get a little bit of Mike Barnes, about enough I think as was supposed to be given with him, but we are slowly starting to build to what I think may or may not be the end of the show, but story-wise I'm not sure if they're going to do that. But we do. So I was talking about Miguel and Robbie, and ultimately we do find out that Johnny has and Rosa, my brain. Johnny and Miguel's mom are going to have a baby. And I think that's really cool that they are trying to sort of blend these characters together in that, or these families, because obviously Johnny came from a broken home. I mean, he lived with Ed Asner, which was fine, but ultimately he wants to have the family that he was unable to achieve with Robbie, and he wants to have like a tight-knit unit with my brain is mush because I'm trying to Google this thing really quickly, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find Carmen, and Carmen is expecting, and I think they do a good job of closing that gap between Robbie and Miguel. Miguel has always been Team Johnny, although he slightly learns from from Daniel in season 4, but ultimately he's following Johnny because Johnny is his sensei. And I like that Robbie finally, I mean, he's been going back and forth throughout the whole show, but he is able to realize the insanity to which Cobra Kai is. And unfortunately, it's heartbreaking that he brought somebody into that world, and he is now seeing the effects of that with Kenny Payne. But Miguel and Robbie were arguably the two leads outside of Sam of the kids, and seeing their back and forth, which it sometimes can be the whole point of the show, having them all move to one side is really interesting, and I'm curious how they're going to keep that up for season 6 with the so again, we're in full spoilers. In the tournament we are going to be getting, like the whole world tournament, I guess we're probably going to get a bunch of different dojos throughout the entire world. So I don't know exactly how we're going to do that, because quite frankly, I like what they did with Kenny and the Cobra Kai students, but if they're both in the tournament in the international karate tournament, I feel like the show honestly doesn't have her anywhere else to go. I think blending all of the Cobra Kai elements together with Johnny, Chosen, who eventually is done, is all on one side, and they're going to be coming under a new karate or a new dojo name. We don't know what it is. That's one of the loose ends moving forward. That with all the younger characters seem to have closure, particularly with like Johnny opening Pandora's box quite literally with bringing Cobra Kai back in season 1, which is something that they completely reference in the show. And we are getting closure with all these loose ends from the films as well. Mike Barnes was actually completely well adjusted after Cobra Kai or Karate Kid 3 with he runs a furniture store. He met his wife, and I mean, it gets burned down, but ultimately he realizes that, or he had closure from Terry Silver, and it gets burned down by Terry Silver, and they have a fight. And I like seeing elements from the different Karate Kid movies that didn't interact in a way. Like, I love seeing Mike Barnes, Johnny Lawrence, and Chosen all in one fight scene together. That is my favorite part of the show, and when they're able to do that, seeing Chosen fight 5 different potential senseis was an awesome moment for me. I enjoy the adult fights for the most part, but one thing I think that the show was lacking more than the other ones is I think they thought the drama was going to hold off between fight scenes longer than I think it should effectively. Like, this show works best when we have good character dynamics and good writing between the two of, or maybe multiple characters, and then we get a fun fight scene. There should only be so much time between each scene, and some of it is really stereotypical, specifically in the Mexico episodes with the Australian guy scamming people with a map and stealing their bags and stuff. Like, that stuff was fine, but I think we took too long to figure out what the stakes were of the season. I still think season 5 is better than season 4 because there was a point to it. Season 4's biggest issue for me was that it felt really repetitive from things we had seen already. The All Valley tournament is fun, but even Karate Kid only did it twice, where we had it in 1 and 3, and in 3 it felt really Daniel only had to have one fight, which they've referenced in the Cobra Kai series. But in Karate Kid Part 2, they go to Japan, they do other things. So I like when they are able to weave these fights into these ridiculous places. As insane as it is at the end of season 3 with the crazy fight at Daniel's house, that was an incredible moment. And obviously the mall, I'm a particular fan of the mall fight, which is in season 2 with Sam, Robbie, and Dimitri fighting off Hawk. That's something that I wanted to bring up, which is that I feel that they're running out of stuff to do with Hawk. Having him be the All Valley champion, I feel like should have been a stronger story point, but the show has too many characters at this point that I feel like some were left out for no reason. Like, we brought in Kenny, and we brought in Sam's younger brother, Anthony, and he just, like, I get the spinning of he was a bully and now he's being bullied, but if this is leading to a final season, I think we need to quite literally slim things down and bring the actual karate students to the forefront. Like, if we are getting a final season, again, it hasn't been picked up for season 6. This show cannot be overly expensive to shoot, but I do feel that if we are going to a tournament, you got to bring your best fighters. So it should be Hawk, Sam, Tori, Miguel, and Robbie. That should really be, and we bring Daniel and Johnny, and maybe Amanda shows up, because I think there's going to be way too much that they're going to have to cover if we are ending on a season 6. I want them to, because I think as much as I enjoy this show, it does feel like we are spinning our wheels, where I don't, not this season, I think more so last season, but this season felt like the penultimate season. We're building to our end game, which is international karate, blood sports for kids. Like that sounds incredible. I want to see all sorts of different fighting styles and actual weapons demonstrations as an actual black belt of karate. I think that's really cool to see weapons demonstrations. I'm a big Ninja Turtles fan, so of course I taught myself the nunchucks. I also did use commas because they're required for a big blue belt. But one thing I wanted to bring up that I've never brought up before is I don't like how everybody who's a fighter for one of the dojos has a black belt. I find that problematic as somebody who actually had to train for a significantly long time to earn one. There's some students that I feel like shouldn't have one. I can understand Robbie, Miguel, Hawk, and Sam having one, but and Tori, but like there's a bunch of students who shouldn't have them. I specifically loved the Chosen fight with Terry Silver. I thought that was really awesome, actually getting to see some weapons fighting, as I mentioned earlier, and ending with a Daniel Terry Silver fight was certainly cool, getting to see those. The show does use flashbacks so well, and I really enjoyed seeing the 3 rules of Quicksilver, ironically hilarious Australian surfing brand, but that's besides the point. So I liked getting to see that, and I feel like we have had closure with Terry Silver. So with Kreese getting out of prison, I didn't really love that storyline. I thought it was just padding for time because we wanted to keep Kreese in the show. I am curious if he's going to be involved. We know that the Cobra Kais are invited to the international, I'm just going to call it the Mortal Kombat. The Mortal Kombat? No, that doesn't work. I apologize. So yeah, I don't know. I like this season a lot. I watched it all in one day, but as I said earlier, I would be really happy if this show ended on a great season 6, where we truly got to see some characters have closure. They should be graduating from high school soon, because these actors are certainly getting up there in age. But I, as somebody who really loved that first season and first 2 seasons in particular, I would like to see more focus on Miguel, Hawk, Sam, and Robbie, and then obviously Daniel and Johnny as a whole. So that's how I felt about Cobra Kai. Let me know what you thought about it. Tweet at me, Kyle_Naranya, or at Film Realist. Don't forget Realist has 2 E's. And I'm curious if this is a show. Do you want to see it go for longer? Do you want to see it end with season 6? Is Netflix even going to renew it for season 6? Who knows? Sandman was a show that was ultimately beloved, and it still has yet to get a review for season 2, which is something that I am nervous about, but the fact that Neil Gaiman has come out and said he's got the ownership. So if it doesn't get renewed, he can bring it to somewhere else, which is great. That makes me very happy because it is a show I quite enjoyed. And Cobra Kai, I would like to see end on a high note. I don't want to see the show whimper out. That's the most depressing part. Another show that I like, Umbrella Academy, is getting a final season. And like I said earlier, this show cannot be overly expensive. It shoots in Atlanta. It's not overly cinematic. However, I think that the action coordination is something quite special, and I really enjoy their use of actual karate, which is cool. So I would love to see more of this show. Again, I want one more season. I know I've said it a ton in this review, and you say, Kyle, you've been super repetitive. I know that, but this is a show I would like. I don't like seeing shows go on and on and on, and you lose that passion for them. There's something special about Cobra Kai, and I hope it stays special. So on to our feature film review of the week, which is The Woman King. The Woman King is an action drama is how I would describe it, starring Viola Davis, Lashana Lynch, directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I am not, I apologize. Now, what's crazy to me, and I wanted to point this out, is that this film only cost $50 million, which is commendable, to say the least. All right, so we are in the non-spoiler section of Woman King. So fear not, I am not going to give any particular plot details, so you do not have to worry, just for general impressions on the film. I saw this Friday opening night, 6:30. Wasn't super busy, but not overly surprised. This is a film that has been marketed quite a bit, and it would be unfortunate if people saw trailers for this and just thought it was like Woman Black Panther, which is, I think, demeaning overall to the film, because that's not what it is. So yes, so we have Sheila Adam in this film. We have Viola Davis playing Naniska, Tuso Badeau as Nawi, Lashana Lynch, as I mentioned earlier. John Boyega is also in the film. The film is about the Dahomey, which are a group of female soldiers similar to the Amazons of legend, and they are fighting for the Dahomey to save them from being sold as is this a spoiler? It may be. Okay, so I will stop. I thought that I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I think the cinematography is really well done. This film has some incredible performances. If you're surprised by an incredible performance by Viola Davis at this point, I don't know if you've seen any of her work before, because rarely does she put in a bad performance. I mean, maybe in like 9 seasons of How to Get Away with Murder, but that's not her fault. She's fantastic in this film, and this film does fall slightly under ensemble to some degree, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. The action is awesome, and something that I really appreciated about the film is that it's shot practically with real extras, and it was shot in Africa, so we're not using sets or exterior sets or in a studio. We are using actual locations in Africa, and are places that I can't remember seeing recently at all. Black Panther was shot in Atlanta, and a lot of that is interior design or interior sets or exterior things in Atlanta. And so getting to see places that I had not really seen before is something really cool. And I like seeing different things. This film has like I said earlier, I'm going to pause for a second. The action is really well done, choreographed. It's not choppy. There are long takes where we actually get to see what's happening. It's visceral to some degree. The film's not overly violent. I believe in Canada it falls under 14A because there is death and murder, but I think that it's not gratuitous in any way. It's just the impact of the hits, the weapon strikes are really, really well done. It's, again, I'm not somebody who likes gratuitous violence, so implying it, I think, is a lot more effective, because the imagination is often worse than something you can put on screen. And the person I wanted to talk about specifically is Tuso Badeau, who I believe was in the Underground Railroad show as Nawe, is incredible. She's not somebody I had seen before. I had not seen that the Underground Railroad, but she is somebody I think people should really watch out for, because she has to go toe-to-toe with Viola Davis and performance-wise, and it is a heavyweight match in terms of the dramatic skill, and the level of depth to her performance is something really, really special. I think criticism of the film that I would give is that it is a film you could take or pick apart in terms of the actual story beats, where they're not overly original, but I think the way that they are packaged and delivered is in a fun way, and not fun as in like, woohoo, I'm having a great time, but it is done effectively, and the way that the relationships between these characters develop is something that you don't often see. There are rarely films, particularly women, in a complete ensemble where 98% of the actors are women, and strong women. Man, they kick so much ass in this film. It's awesome. And Lashana Lynch is a standout. She was awesome as Maria Rambeau and as 007 in No Time to Die. So it's not really surprising to see she got to do another film where she gets to kick a lot of butt. She is the tank of the Dahomey soldiers. It's awesome. She has this really great scene where shows like her mental fortitude and physical toughness against one of the male soldiers, it's awesome. I don't want to get in specific details as to exactly what's happening with that, but I think it's a very cinematic film. This looked really good on the big screen. I'm glad that it got a theatrical release, and the reason I brought up the budget was that it looks awesome. This movie does not look cheap. The money seems to have been used effectively, which is something I really appreciated, because there are more often than not, we have films that spend way too much money and they look like crap. And so for a film with what would be considered lower budget to look like an awesome blockbuster is great, especially when they don't have to use a lot of CG. I don't know if they did build the village or the whole thing. That may have been done with models, but to some degree I wouldn't be surprised if they just actually built it, because the world feels really immersive. I feel that you are brought into it really effectively, where seeing all the characters interact, you're seeing how this culture works. And unfortunately, what for the most part, what people were having to endure in this time frame in Africa. And it doesn't sugarcoat it at all. It's pretty straight up and brutal with it. And it's something that I really enjoyed and I look forward to watching again. I don't really have anything else to say without getting into specific story beats, because those are the things that I'm most critical of. Performances are good. The score is good. It looks good. And it's a film that I would recommend. So without further ado, let's get into spoilers. All right, we are now in spoiler territory for The Woman King. If you do not want to be spoiled, you may hop out, have a good time, maybe go watch The Woman King, and then come back to this portion of the review. I would like for you to do that. Please don't leave the episode halfway through. I work hard on these, and I would like for you to hear the whole thing and why I'm being critical of the film. All right, so spoilers, here we go. So yes, so the film does follow the Dahomey as they are fighting off the the Oyo Empire, who is selling their citizens of their small country or village, or I believe they classify it as a country, to the slave drivers as the trade. That's how they're making all their money. The villain in this film would be something I would be overly critical of, because like he's just a straight up bad guy, and ultimately like I don't feel that he has any dimension or any character where we get to see his point of view. One of the most interesting things about a villain is when you can see from their point of view, and that they're the hero of their own story. Those are typically the most interesting villains, and this one is not played in that way at all. He's just bad to the bone. But yes, so we meet Tuso Badeau's character Nawi, who is trying to be married off by her father because she's useless, and this is how these things work, apparently. And she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be married off. Ironic if you're currently watching House of the Dragon without getting into spoilers. But and ultimately she is brought to the King Gizo, who's played by John Boyega, and is told that you can either become a Dahomey soldier, or you're done. You're no longer one of us, which is very critical. But so we get to see her hero's journey in becoming one of the warriors of the Dahomey. And the first part that I wasn't a huge fan of was I feel that her skill level increases really quickly, but plateaus at some point, which was interesting. She makes a couple friends. It's very like Mulan in a way, where she's got the group of, I mean, in this it's all women that they bond together. Some are actually from different villages. The Dahomey are bringing in women who have been taken from other places and bringing them into their into their ranks, and they train them, and there is a test that you have to pass, which is very Wonder Woman Amazon Trials, which was super awesome, although way worse. There's a scene where they have to run through thorns, just a net of like flower thorns, which was just it gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. And ultimately Nawi is successful. She's very determined, but she's also her own individual, which is certainly interesting in that we see Naniska, Viola Davis's character, be like, you can't do that. If we are to be a well-oiled machine, we need to work as one, which is even more interesting because the introduction of Nawi to Naniska is really throwing her off, because Naniska, realizing that the current leader of the other group of people selling slaves is actually the man who raped her when she was abducted as a young woman, had a baby, and turns out that baby is Nawi in a really, it's not that it's convoluted, but it's too much of a circle becoming complete. I think it would have been way more interesting to the story if Nawi wasn't Naniska's daughter, because then they're just bonding because of who they are, not who they happen to be, which is, it feels too convenient for the story overall, which is, I found it to be a little disappointing that it was this neat in terms of storytelling, and that is something I think, while it is done effectively, I wish they had done something different with it. I think Nawi, like I said earlier, Tuso Bado is awesome as that character, and she does grow because she is pushed to the limit by Naniska, and ultimately proves that she is the up-and-coming rookie of the new class of warrior. But her independence ultimately, it gets Lashana Lynch's character killed, where they are ultimately trying to show their strength. They want to get rid of these slave drivers. And what was interesting to me about this particular part of the story was that the Dahomey are also selling slaves to the Portuguese, the British, the French, and that is how Gizo is staying rich, and they are building their local economy. And it was interesting that they have this conversation of like, why are we still selling our people, not specifically the Dahomey, but Africans, when we have all these other resources that we could be using to ultimately supply us with money, goods for trade and whatnot. And I think the conversation is done really effectively. Now, for context, I am not a Black Canadian. I'm not an African American. I am a minority of a different background, and so me on the outside of this, I thought that the conversation that the characters do have is handled with a lot of nuance, which is great. It would be disappointing for something like this to be handled poorly, and it is not. So that was something that I think is really interesting, and I would be very curious how other people feel about it. I think that the ending of the film does drag slightly. We do get to see this big, awesome fight scene, but ultimately it ends Act 2, where Nawi does get captured, and it kind of just keeps going. There's this prophecy running throughout the film that Gizo is going to name the Woman King to be right beside him and lead the Dahomey into a new age. And Naniska doesn't want to say out loud that she wants this job, but we do know that with Sheila Adam, who would be familiar to a lot of people as she was in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. She is one of the Dahomey who is into dream telling and reading dreams and prophecies. What do they mean? What does your dream represent? Is it seeing the future? And believes that all these things are coming together and may lead to Naniska becoming the Woman King. And Naniska does ultimately defy the king to save Nawi, her daughter. And the villain, the man who raped Naniska, is ultimately killed, and we get to see that she does become the woman king, and it is a really awesome and glorious moment. The part of the movie that I did not need was the Portuguese man who is, his mother was from Dahomey and sold, and so he always wanted to come back and see his homeland. And the relationship between him, Malik, and Nawi is not, it felt padded. I know we need something to pull Nawi away from her new part of life, because the Dahomey soldiers, the female ones, are not to wed, have babies. They're just, it's all about serving the king. And I understand that there needed to be something to show a different point of view on this way of life, but I think I don't feel that his performance is very good. There, she just instantly has a thing for him. Again, it's very Wonder Woman, their interaction, which is quite funny, where he was swimming in not a lake, but I guess a spring in the jungle outside of the country. And I don't feel that there was enough there to pull Nawi away. So that's something that I would have changed, but again, what do I know? This is just my point of view on the film as a whole. But yes, I think it was really good. I quite enjoyed it. It's a film that comes out when there's not a lot out. I think it's a film worth seeing on the big screen. There's enough drama in it for somebody who may not enjoy a film like this, with a lot of really awesome and brutal action sequences, but I'm glad I saw it. I would recommend others see it. If you go and see it, let me know what you thought of it on your own. Next week, I have no idea what I am going to be reviewing, because we are in a lean part of the year. She-Hulk will not be over. Game of Thrones will not be over. Well, yeah, I'm not sure. So keep following the Twitter handles. As I said earlier, you can follow me directly. That's at Kyle_Naranja. That's NORONHA. Or you can follow at Film Realists for updates on what's coming out. I don't believe there's any Netflix stuff. Rings of Power isn't over yet. I'm not sure. So I'm going to find something new to review next week. Heck, maybe it'll be news and mailbag next week if there's nothing else. So if you do have a question, you can send it to those Twitter handles, and maybe I'll cover it. I know I have a couple already that I have been asked to comment on, so that'll be fun. But other than that, there's nothing else really for me to say except we'll see you next time.